When we think about climate change, the first two major sources of greenhouse gas emissions spring to mind: cars, buses and aeroplanes, and smog-billowing smokestacks from heavy industry. But what scientists say is the next major polluter who'll keep you guessing until the cows come home.
G'day, I'm John Barrington and I'm here in Braidwood in regional New South Wales at a cattle sale. Now, don't you just love the country? Clear skies, fresh air, sunshine, not a smoggy cloud in sight. But behind me, farmers are dealing in Australia's third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Not cars, not coal-fired power stations, livestock.
So that's emissions from cows, sheep and goats. And you know what that means? Methane, which makes up about 70% of leaked gas from livestock. And of course we all know where methane comes from, but it's not something farmers find particularly funny.
Belching and sort of bottom burps, whatever you want to call it, but it's serious business. I mean, if at the moment they're looking at taxing greenhouse gas emissions, it comes under that.
George Sheriff says emissions from livestock will be yet another financial burden on the industry if and when a carbon tax is imposed on farmers in 2015 under the emissions trading scheme. However, the Rudd government has recently announced a $26.8 million research program to attempt to reduce the impact of flatulent farm animals.
Farmers have to be part of the global solution, have to be part of the Australian solution of reducing greenhouse pollution. This is about making sure that farmers have as many different tools as possible at their disposal, making sure that that can be accurately measured, and most importantly, trying to make sure that we can do that in a way that doesn't limit productivity but actually drives productivity.
So if we want to reduce methane emissions, we just need to stop the animals farting, right?
Well, that seems to be the perception out there, that it's coming from the rear end of the animal, but most methane is actually belched out through the mouth. About 90+ % is produced in the rumen, which is at the front end of the digestive tract.
Ah, so burps are the main problem, not farts. Hi Mum. So what's the answer? As well as not feeding our livestock baked beans, do we also stop feeding them beer as well?
If you eat a balanced diet, you don't seem to flatulate as much as if you eat a lot of baked beans and beer. If you send a cow into a feedlot where they're eating what they're not really designed to eat, then they do produce a lot of methane. Out here in the paddock where they eat a balanced diet, they don't produce as much methane as they're supposed to. And if you look at the whole carbon equation of the amount of carbon that they're sequestering into the soil through their manure, if you use dung beetles and things like that to incorporate it in the soil, then I think you'll find that they are the solution to the problem rather than the problem.
Martin Royd says it's not fair to blame the humble cow, and a balanced diet of grass and not grain is the key to lowering emissions. His animals self-regulate by taking salts, minerals and wattle bark from the moo bar. Dung beetles then sequester the gases from cow pats by burying them deep in the soil. Martin is doubtful the government's 18 research projects will effectively measure emissions, saying the work will be carried out in artificial environments. But Agriculture Minister Tony Burke says that's not the case.
A lot of it is happening out in paddocks. So if that's the objection you've heard, when they go through the detail of these projects, I think those farmers will be very pleased.
Maverick Nationals leader in the Senate, Barnaby Joyce, says it's all a lot of hot air.
If you're going to have cattle, you're going to have methane, you know, and you might have a bit yourself. You know, we're going to charge along with the commuters in the morning and make sure that there's no methane, exuded from them. We're going to chase cattle around, checking whether they're farting or burping. I mean, this is the sort of maniac stuff that you talk about when you're smashed. It's not supposed to be government policy.
Some vegetarian organisations argue the best way to reduce emissions from farm animals is to simply stop eating meat and remove the livestock industry altogether.
Livestock. Go veg. Be green. Let's save our planet.
But Dr. Robin Tennant-Woods is a vegetarian and says you can't expect all Aussies to give up their steak.
Yes, going vegetarian is a way of addressing the problem, but it's not a realistic argument in the total context of getting people to change their behaviour. Nothing will get people offside faster than saying, you know, you shouldn't be eating meat because.
However, Robin says Australia should reduce livestock numbers and be looking to alternative sources of protein such as kangaroo meat. Bungendore wool grower David Watson agrees, saying Skippy's farts, burps and droppings release far less methane than those from livestock.
The farming community has to do its share. That might mean modifying practices, It might mean farming more kangaroos than beef cattle.
So we've got cars, coal and now cows taking the credit for climate change. But despite all this and a crippling drought, farmers are modifying their practices to reduce emissions from livestock and remain viable. They're adaptive and resilient, and the hardships they face and conquer make laughing about burps and farts a little bit on the nose.